The Mitsubishi A6M Zero is not just the most famous Japanese aircraft of World War II, it is one of the most iconic fighters in aviation history. When the Zero first appeared in the skies over China in 1940, Allied pilots were stunned. It could outturn, outclimb, and outrange almost anything in the air. Designed by Jiro Horikoshi, the Zero embodied Japan's aviation philosophy: maximum agility, extreme range, and deadly precision. Powered by the Nakajima Sake radial engine, the A6M Zero had an operational range of over 1,600 miles, unheard of for a carrier-based fighter. This allowed Japan to strike deep into enemy territory across the vast Pacific. The Zero's lightweight construction was achieved by sacrificing armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks. Early in the war, this decision paid off. During the attacks on Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, and the Dutch East Indies, the Zero dominated Allied aircraft such as the P-40 Warhawk and Brewster Buffalo, armed with two 20mm cannons and two 7.7mm machine guns. The Zero delivered devastating firepower. Japanese pilots were trained in aggressive dogfighting tactics, exploiting the Zero's tight turning radius to deadly effect. However, this same design philosophy would become its weakness. As the war progressed, Allied pilots adapted. New aircraft like the F-6F Hellcat and F-4U Corsair used speed, armor, and boom and zoom tactics to counter the Zero. By 1944, the Zero was increasingly obsolete. Still, it remained in service until the end of the war, even being used in kamikaze missions, symbolizing Japan's desperate final resistance. The A6M Zero remains a legend, a perfect example of early war dominance undone by technological stagnation and strategic miscalculation. The Nakajima Ki-43 Hayabusa, known to the Allies as Ohka, was the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force's most widely used fighter of World War II. Unlike the Navy's Zero, the Ki-43 was designed specifically for land-based operations. Its philosophy mirrored traditional Japanese air combat values, agility above all else. The Ki-43 featured extremely light construction and innovative combat flaps, allowing it to outturn almost any Allied fighter. Early in the war, it achieved remarkable success against British Hurricanes and early American aircraft in Burma, Malaya, and China. Powered by a Nakajima Ha-25 radial engine, the Hayabusa lacked raw speed but excelled in close-quarters dogfighting. Japanese army pilots used tight turning engagements to force enemies into defensive spirals. However, the aircraft's armament was weak, usually two 12.7mm machine guns, and like the Zero, it lacked armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. This made it extremely vulnerable once Allied firepower improved. By mid-war, aircraft such as the P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang exposed the Ki-43's shortcomings. Despite this, the Hayabusa remained in service until 1945 due to Japan's limited industrial capacity. In the final stages of the war, many Ki-43s were used in kamikaze attacks. For Japanese pilots, the Hayabusa became a symbol of honor, sacrifice, and fading air supremacy. The Mitsubishi G4M Betty was the Imperial Japanese Navy's primary land-based bomber, and one of the most controversial aircraft of the war, designed for long-range, maritime strike missions. The G4M could fly extraordinary distances, allowing Japan to attack enemy ships far from its home islands. The bomber gained notoriety early in the war by sinking the British battleships HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse in December 1941, a moment that shocked the world and proved the power of air-launched torpedoes. However, this range came at a terrible cost. To save weight, the G4M had no armor protection and lacked self-sealing fuel tanks. Allied pilots nicknamed it the Flying Zippo because it ignited easily when hit. Armed with torpedoes, bombs, and defensive machine guns, the Betty was deadly against ships but extremely vulnerable to fighters. As Allied air superiority grew, losses became catastrophic. Despite its flaws, the G4M remained in service throughout the war, even being used to carry Admiral Yamamoto on his fatal flight in 1943. The G4M represents Japan's strategic gamble, prioritizing range and offense while sacrificing survivability, a decision that ultimately proved fatal. The Kawanishi N1K Shiden, known to the Allies as George, was one of the most formidable Japanese fighters of the late war period. Unlike earlier Japanese designs that prioritized agility over protection, the Shiden represented a shift toward firepower, durability, and high-performance interception. Originally designed as a floatplane fighter, engineers adapted it into a land-based interceptor when Japan urgently needed aircraft capable of stopping Allied bombers. Powered by the Nakajima Homura engine, the Shiden packed heavy armament, 4 20mm cannons, making it one of the most heavily armed Japanese fighters of the war. This firepower finally allowed Japanese pilots to challenge American aircraft head-on. The Shiden was fast, stable and rugged compared to the Zero. It also featured armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks, addressing fatal weaknesses of earlier Japanese aircraft. In combat, the Shiden performed exceptionally well against F6° Fahrenheit Hellcats and even B-29 Superfortress bombers. Elite units such as the 343rd Kokutai, commanded by Ace Minoru Genda, used the Shiden to deadly effect. However, the aircraft arrived too late. Mechanical reliability issues and Japan's collapsing industrial base limited production. Fuel shortages and inexperienced pilots further reduced its impact. Despite these limitations, the N1K Shiden is widely regarded as one of Japan's best fighters of World War II, proving that Japan could still design world-class aircraft under extreme pressure. The Nakajima Ki-43 Hayate, known to Allied forces as Frank, was the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force's most advanced and capable fighter of the war. Designed to counter American aircraft like the P-51 Mustang and B-29 Superfortress, the Ki-84 combined speed, climb rate, armor, and firepower, a dramatic evolution from earlier Japanese fighters. Powered by a powerful radial engine, the Hayate could reach speeds comparable to late-war Allied fighters. Its armament typically included 2 20mm cannons and 2 heavy machine guns, with later variants mounting 4 cannons. Unlike earlier designs, the Ki-84 had armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks, greatly improving pilot survivability. In ideal conditions, the Hayate could outperform many Allied aircraft. However, poor fuel quality, manufacturing defects, and lack of trained pilots severely limited its effectiveness. Despite these challenges, experienced Japanese aces achieved impressive results using the Ki-84, especially in homeland defense against American bomber formations. The Ki-84 Hayate stands as Japan's ultimate army fighter, a machine that could have changed the air war had it appeared earlier and in greater numbers. Yokosuka D4Y Suisei, codenamed Judy by the Allies, was the Imperial Japanese Navy's fastest dive bomber of World War II. Inspired by German aircraft design, the Suisei featured sleek aerodynamics and impressive speed, allowing it to outrun many Allied fighters during the early and mid-war periods. Powered by an inline engine, the D4Y could deliver precision dive bombing attacks against ships and ground targets. It played a key role in major naval battles, including the Battle of the Philippine Sea. However, its light construction made it vulnerable to enemy fire. As Allied air defenses improved, losses increased dramatically. In the final phase of the war, the Suisei was increasingly used in kamikaze attacks, reflecting Japan's desperate situation. Despite its tragic end, the D4Y Suisei was one of the most elegant and effective dive bombers of the Pacific War, combining speed, accuracy, and innovation. The Aichi D3A, known to the Allies as Val, was the primary carrier-based dive bomber of the Imperial Japanese Navy during the early years of World War II. Despite its outdated fixed landing gear and relatively slow speed, the D3A proved devastatingly effective due to exceptional pilot training and pinpoint accuracy. The Val played a central role in some of the most important naval battles of the war, including Pearl Harbor, the Indian Ocean Raid, Coral Sea, and Midway. During these engagements, Japanese dive bomber crews achieved remarkably high hit rates against Allied ships. Armed with a 250 kilograms bomb under the fuselage and 2 smaller wing-mounted bombs, the D3A was optimized for precision strikes. Its excellent, low-speed handling made it highly stable during steep dive attacks. However, the aircraft was lightly built and poorly defended. As Allied fighters and anti-aircraft fire improved, losses increased dramatically. By mid-war, the D3A was increasingly obsolete, but it continued to serve due to production limitations. In the final months of the war, many D3As were converted for kamikaze missions. The Aichi D3A Val represents the terrifying effectiveness of well-trained aircrews combined with precision bombing, a key weapon that helped Japan achieve early naval dominance. The Mitsubishi Ki-43 Hiryu, codenamed Peggy by the Allies, was one of the most advanced bombers developed by Japan during World War II. Unlike earlier Japanese bombers that prioritized range over survivability, the K-67 was designed with speed, armor, and defensive firepower in mind. It could operate as a level bomber, torpedo bomber, or ground attack aircraft. Powered by two powerful radial engines, the Hiryu had impressive speed for a bomber and could evade interception more effectively than earlier designs. Its defensive armament included multiple heavy machine guns, and it featured armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks, rare features for Japanese bombers. The Ki-67 saw action in China, Southeast Asia, and the defense of the Japanese homeland. It was also used in daring low-level torpedo attacks against Allied shipping. In the final months of the war, some Ki-67s were converted into special attack aircraft, carrying massive explosive charges in suicide missions. The Hiryu stands as one of Japan's most capable bomber designs, a glimpse of what Japanese aviation might have achieved if resources and time had not run out. The Kawanishi H8K, known to the Allies as Emily, is widely regarded as one of the finest flying boats of World War II by any nation. Designed for long-range maritime patrol, reconnaissance, and bombing, the H8K combined exceptional range with heavy defensive armament. Powered by 4 engines, the Emily could patrol vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean, locating enemy fleets and conducting surprise attacks. Its thick hull and robust construction made it extremely difficult to shoot down. Unlike many Japanese aircraft, the H8K featured strong defensive armament, armor protection, and self-sealing fuel tanks, making it far more survivable. The aircraft was even used in long-range bombing raids, including an attempted second attack on Pearl Harbor in 1942. However, the H8K was expensive and complex to produce. Only a limited number were built, preventing it from having a strategic impact. Even so, Allied pilots respected and feared the Emily. It remains one of the most advanced and well-balanced flying boats ever built.